Episode 1. What Really Happened on Lake Herman Road? Let's begin by watching a reenactment of the fatal shooting of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen on Lake Herman Road the night of December 20th, 1968. This reenactment was created for the television series Case Reopened. This reenactment faithfully perpetuates several myths about the shooting of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen found in Graysmith's book. The first myth is that the shooter arrived at the scene alone.
David and Betty Lou were sitting in the car talking when a man approached, wielding a gun.
He literally herded them from the car by walking around firing bullets into it to get David Faraday to come out the specific side that he wanted.
The second myth is that he fired at least one shot from the area outside the left side of the car. The third myth is that David was probably shot first. The fourth myth is that the shooter chased Betty Lou while he shot her in the back 5 times.
He chased Betty Lou Jensen down that country road and shot her dead center.
None of these things are true. The law enforcement agency documents Graysmith supposedly used to write his book tell a very different story. First, another car appeared and parked about 10 feet to the right of David and Betty Lou's Rambler station wagon. At 11:14, a witness named James saw the two cars parked together as he drove past. About a quarter of a mile down the road, James heard what he thought was the sound of a gunshot. Solano County Coroner Dan Herman helpfully demonstrates the path of the first bullet. By tracing the path of this bullet, which entered the right rear window of the Rambler, traveled across the back of the station wagon and lodged in the left rear wheel well, we can see that it corresponds to the shell casing which was found at a spot about 20 feet to the right of the car. Robert Graysmith claimed that this shot was fired from outside the left or driver's side of the Rambler, but no shell casings were found anywhere near that side of the car. But we can see from the evidence that not only was this shot not fired from the driver's side of the Rambler, it was in fact fired from the area just outside the passenger side of the second car. The second shell casing was found at a spot about 14 feet in front of and to the right of the front bumper of the station wagon. This bullet was not recovered, however, it appears to have grazed the roof of the victim's car. Betty Lou had been sitting in the front passenger seat of the Rambler station wagon. At some point, she got out of the car. One bullet was fired down into the car through the roof just over the right rear door. A shell casing was found on the right front floorboard. In order to shoot David at contact range in the left side of his head, the shooter must have been standing to David's left. If David were shot first, this would have required the shooter to either step over or around David's body back to the passenger door of the station wagon and then turn and shoot Betty Lou as she ran towards the road. So it seems more likely that Betty Lou was shot first and then David. Once the shooter got Betty Lou out of the car, he fired a warning shot into the roof of the car in order to scare David into staying in the car. The next 6 shell casings were found grouped together just outside the passenger door of the station wagon. Betty Lou had been shot in the back 5 times. Apparently, the shooter missed with 1 shot. Graysmith claimed the shooter chased Betty Lou as he shot her 5 times in the back, but obviously he stayed in this spot. The shooter then moved towards the rear of the car as David got out of the passenger door. Standing to David's left, the shooter pressed the muzzle of the gun to David's head right behind the left ear and pulled the trigger. David fell to the ground dead. The shooter returned to the second car, and the car immediately left the scene. The next witness, Stella Medeiros, arrived at the scene at about 11:20. Now, why would Graysmith falsify all of these facts? According to the Zodiac myth, the shooter on Lake Herman Road acted alone. Using the same documents Graysmith used to write his book, we can see that the shooter arrived at the scene with accomplices and then got out of the passenger side of the second car. And that just happens to match the known MO of another notorious killer in Vallejo in the late 1960s.